Welcome to the Studio Chat podcast. My name is Barbara Thompson. Each week, I'll be bringing you a self-care expert or a message to help you to discover how to live your best life and understand your mind-body connection. Beth and I continued the chat that we had over on episode 58 about pet grief. We talk about when a beloved pet passes, the links that a pet that has passed on can have with other remaining animals or parts of our life. We talk about all pets have all sorts of different personalities, and sometimes when we lose one, we have this gut instinct that we want to replace them and get a pet that looks exactly the same. And when is the right time to introduce a new pet into the family? We also talk about how other people's words can hurt us during this time of grief and healing. And grief is really on our own terms. And a lot of people just don't get it and will not get it. We don't have days off for pet grief, and it's something that isn't really still spoken about. And we want to change this. We want to normalize it, talk about it. And grief is different for every person and every loss. We discuss the choices that we have as a pet guardian and a pet owner to do with euthanasia, and the kind of decisions that when I was a dog owner, at the beginning, I had no idea that this would even have to be something I would even have to contemplate or think about. And we take time to honour and celebrate the amazing men and women of vet nurses and vets and anyone that works within a vet clinic throughout the world, the amazing job that these people do day in and day out. And so we take a moment in this episode to honour and admire and celebrate the beautiful work that our veterinarians do. We also talk about why pet loss can hit us harder than possibly other losses that we've had in our life, and public holidays and special occasions, what it's like celebrating when we don't have a beloved pet with us anymore. So if you'd like to get in contact with Beth, please head over to her Instagram page at Honouring Our Animals, or you can check out her website, honouringouranimals.com. Join us for the second part of the conversation that I have with Beth Bigler about pet grief.
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind too for you, and I'm experiencing this now as Zelda she's 19, but she's not in the best of health. And so I'm in a place of acceptance that our time is, we don't have many years left. Hopefully we have even one. Zelda is such a link to me, to Arnie. Yeah. And I did welcome 2 new kittens into my home a year ago. And so she has been teaching them the ways, but because Zelda grew up with Arnie, I feel like now Zelda has taught my current cats about Arnie. It's this linking idea. And that's something I feel like many people haven't talked about before. And I'm curious from your perspective, now that the 3 of them have passed, and that was such a chapter in your life. What was it like when Maisie died to kind of feel like you lost the link to the others? Or did you feel that way? Or how did you see the link there? And then with Coda, too. Like, how does that work?
Big link, because it's a chapters in 20 years of my life. They were my 3. The 3 of us and me were tight. They were my family. And then when Chester passed, it was just Floss, Maisie and I. We were so close. They used to come to parties with me. And anyone, they just always came everywhere, and they'd go to parties and all the boys would be standing around the barbecue having a beer, and Floss would be there, and they'd be, oh, it's all right, Barbs, we're just feeding us. And sausages aren't good for dogs, but no. My dogs would go to all the parties, they'd come camping, it was Floss, Maisie, Barbara. When I moved to Australia, they were part of my life. They were my attachment to New Zealand. So links for me was, yes, they were linked to Chester, but they were linked to my marriage. They were linked to Barbara in her 20s, living in New Zealand, now starting a new life in Australia. And then the reason why I reached Coda was a rescue kitten. And the reason why I got him was when on a day that Maisie was very sick, because her sickness would come in flows and peaks. I'm going to lose her. No, she's really good. I'm going to lose her. For 2 years. And one particular day, her paws were just red raw, and I'd give her Epsom salt baths, and she'd just keep licking. She was in really irritated. And I was like, what can I do to help Maisie? And because her and I are so close, getting to the point where it wasn't too healthy, and I was like, I need something else to build the love and for us to love something else. And I didn't want to get another dog because I wanted Maisie to be number one. Like, it was really important that she was known that she was my number one. I would tell her every day that she's my number one. And then there was a cat that came on. That's what I mean. My animals have chosen me. It was a rescue kitten organization here, and there was a litter of kittens that were found in the bush. And this one particular cat that was called Buttons, I'll never forget it. Sweet Buttons, loves playing with dogs, and had a picture of him with these two big foster dogs, and he's so sweet. And I thought, that's the one. So I went along to this foster place and loved Buttons, but then all of a sudden this ginger guy called Coda came and sat on my knee, and this lady had done this for 25 years, and she said, cats choose you. And I was like, whatever. Yes. And she says, Coda, we've had a lot of people come through. He hasn't gone to anyone, but he's come to you. And then as I left, he followed me on the window ledge, and I was like, and he was so tiny, and I was like, oh, bloody hell, it's happening again. These animals are choosing me. And so I got Coda. And so I actually found some videos last night, which was interesting because they never really, when I first got them, they got on. And then later on, they would tolerate each other. But I wanted this romantic thing for Maisie where she curled up with him and cuddled him. And anytime he got near her, she would lift the side of her lip up and do the whole, and that would be it. But she was so cool because he's my first Australian animal. So he's a real Aussie. He's a ginger guy. He's another big cat. And he jumps up on my bench or finds naughty plastic and tries to eat the plastic or rip one of my work folders. And as he's doing that, I could be anywhere in the house. And Maisie had this high-pitched, Mum, Coda's doing something naughty again. And she would always tell him off. And I would be somewhere in the house, be like, what is it, Maisie? And she'd be like, Mum, look, like and he'd always be doing something naughty. And that was their dynamic. Like that.
Go Maisie.
But I always had this fantasy of them getting close and stuff. But 3 days before Maisie passed, Coda, wherever we've lived in 2 properties now, he has a man cave. So he loves because in Australia, we don't really let the cats outside. So this is all new for me. I've never had an indoor cat. Yeah. Probably wouldn't have got a cat if I knew it had to be indoors here. But anyway, that's another story. But anyway, he's an indoor cat and he loves hanging out on my car or being in the garage. So I call it his man cave. And 3 days before I knew that Maisie was really sick, he would just sit in the man cave all day. He knew. And even when we took her to the vets to say goodbye, they had a little bit of a nose-to-nose action. So there was tolerance there. But it's so interesting that he was Australian, and I always joke that they probably spoke different languages. I wonder if they do have accents. Like, I wonder if when Coda came in and talked to Maisie, if like he talks different to her. Like, it'd just be so interesting to know that kind of stuff. But she tolerated him, and then as it got on, like, she was starting to get sick too. So I gave her a lot of grace, and I gave him a lot of grace that, okay, they're not going to be, because her and Floss would always cuddle and love, and that's all I wanted for her. But she was still number one, which was awesome. And the tie for me was a lot. It was the 20 years of my life. It was actually this whole, even though I do have a cat now, it's that pit of my stomach that I don't have a dog now. And my dogs were really needed to be cared for. Like, my pug had to be, her wrinkles had to be washed, eye drops every day, specific diet, on the hydro treadmill. Like, I didn't just care for my dog. I did everything I could just to give them the really best life, because that's what I wanted for them. And same with Maisie, when she got sick, if the vet said, we usually get 3 months as blood test. No dog owners, hardly any that have Cushing's disease get them. But I did, because I was just like, I hate it sometimes because that's who I am. But I know with each of my animals passing, with whatever finances I had at the time, whatever I could do, I gave them my all. Without being silly, I still lived my life, but that was part of being able to, like, I know I did everything I could to help them. And yeah, so just that whole tie for me is huge. It was Floss being with Maisie, connected to Floss, connected to Chester, connected to New Zealand, connected to my marriage, connected to everything I've been through in the last 20 years. It's a lot. And then Maisie was a connection. I started my business with her. She was my therapy dog. So not only I was really worried that in my therapy room downstairs, we spent a lot of time in it before she passed. And I always said to her, you come and visit me in here whenever I'm in here. I want you to always be with me.
Mm-hmm.
And when all my clients would cry, she's not a trained therapy dog, but she would just sit there at their toes. She was just all my animals, the best, well-behaved, easiest animals. Coda's different. He's a naughty little boy. And that's been hard for me because he's naughty. Yes. But these three, and that's okay, everyone's different, but these three were just the easiest. I could not tell you. It was not hard to care for them. They were just well behaved, even when they was just, I was very lucky.
Yes. Yeah, that's something we talk about a lot too when I work with people and they're thinking about, well, I'd like to welcome another animal into my family. Am I ready? Am I not ready? Is it a good idea? Is it a distraction? And I always say, don't count on your new animal being like your animal who died, because just like Coda, you can come in and get a very different creature with very different needs and personality. And, many people dream of a carbon copy of their soulmate animal or animals they've had before. And I relate to that very much. That's what I wanted too. But I do believe firmly that we get the animals that we need at the right time. The divine timing of when our animals come into our lives and what gifts, guidance, lessons, and teachings they have to offer us. What you needed 20 years ago when your animals came into your life is very different, perhaps, than what you need today. And I think we have to be very mindful of that as we look at expanding our families after a loss, to be very accepting that this animal might be very different, and I remain open to see what those gifts are going to be, because sometimes that's a hard transition.
And that's beautiful that you brought that up, because I know with both of my losses, especially with Floss, it's been many times that I actually reached out to the rescue pug place here and thought, oh, maybe I foster or have a look at another one. But I know that I'm just always trying to replace her. So I just know that time probably for me isn't, unless it was a black one, unless it was a black pug. I personally couldn't own another one. And then when Maisie passed, I've been looking a little bit, but no, it's a really normal human nature thing. As soon as one passes, you want that connection with them. You feel like if the dog looks like them, that they'll be like them. And a perfect example with Coda. He's not like any animal, and I've got to give him grace too, because he's just different. And then the other thing too, before we go today, is I want to highlight again, when you're grieving a beloved animal, it doesn't have to necessarily be a dog and cat. It can be like a turtle, or it can be a horse, or it can be a fish. Other people's words, I find, hurt so much. So I was lucky, and actually all three of my animals passing, I was single all those 3 times. And for me, at that point in my life, the type of relationships I had in my life were very toxic. And I'm so grateful, hand on my heart, that I was present at every single passing, that I didn't have a selfish, horrible human being as a partner that was like they could have really ruined those moments for me. So I'm grateful that at that moment, boy, it was hard being alone, and I wanted someone. Like, there's different love from a partner that you can put your head in their arms, or just be held and just be like, you can get it from your friends. I'm sure you can get it from your children, but having like your partner, it's a different connection. Yes. And when it happened, I was like, man, I wish I had someone. But now looking back, and the beauty of it is I can go, no, I got to do it on my terms.
Yes.
I got to hide in my cave, or if I didn't want to go out, or I didn't want to talk to anyone. And that's what I mean, is people's words. Oh, good, you can travel now. Or they held you back. Or, oh, you spent so much money, now you can get ahead. Or, oh, why don't you just get another one? Like, you need another therapy dog, just get another dog. Like, what?
Why aren't you happy that they're in heaven?
I haven't heard that one. I don't think
Oh,
someone would
yes.
say that to me.
Yes. Aren't you glad they're in a better place? Don't cry. Your animal wouldn't like it if you cry. Well, they had a long life. You know, you shouldn't feel sorry for yourself. At least it wasn't a child. I mean, people say all kinds of things.
Mm,
Really, really
yes, I've
cutting.
noticed. Yeah, and it's interesting because the people that, through all three of them, people that I haven't really known have given me the most comfort. They're the ones that, whether I've known them or not, have reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm with you on this journey. I've been there." And they don't even ask, "Do you need anything?" They're the ones that might drop a hot dinner off at your doorstep.
Yes.
They don't ask. They just, or
Right.
send you, like, that's the difference is even reaching out to someone like yourself, like the support is just, you show up on your page every day, the tools that you give, the things that you get us to think about is just, you feel supported. And that's the cool thing about today. We don't have to be in the same country. You don't have to have someone really, because today in life, we're surrounded by so many people, but they don't help us.
Right. And they
So,
don't get it. Yeah, a lot of
yeah,
people just don't get it. They don't get it and they can't. And we're working on that. We're working on normalizing this and helping people understand the importance of honoring and validating this type of grief. But there's a lot of people that just don't get it, even therapists, a lot of therapists don't get this and they don't want it in their practice. It can be very hard to find any support in the United States or elsewhere. So it is really important that there is a place to go. There is community to be had. There are people who understand and people whose life mission it is to support this and help you through.
yeah, because it can affect us uh, as someone that's just lost another beloved pet. The grief again is so different. Like I'm having trouble sleeping and I'm having trouble, like it's all like the same type of symptoms and feelings as I've lost a human. Like my brain doesn't know that it's a dog. Like to me, she's my human.
Oh.
She was a human to me. And so that's where, you've got to be some kindness, and people are like, "Oh, get outside for a walk, get outside and do this." Yep, I hear that and do that. But at the same time, I need to find my own way
Hmm.
to move through this, and just, I've honored myself this time to sit in it and feel what I've wanted to feel and not push past it. And it's been hard, but it's been like I could easily push past it and just go back to the gym and train and like almost run away from my feelings. But if I'm
Hmm.
just sitting here with them, and it's so interesting. One day I can be okay, not okay, but I can feel okay. Like I'm thinking of her and I'm not really triggered and crying. And then the next day can be so the opposite. And it can just be like it's just happened. And then, like I've shared with you before, this passing with Maisie feels like, even though it was 48 days ago, feels like it was 10 years ago. And that's
Hmm.
hard for me because this is the house she was in not too long ago. It's hard for me to realize my life with her. As my brain is really struggling, where I can feel at peace with Floss. And I know it was 4.5 years ago. Maisie's passing feels longer than Floss's.
Yeah. Yep. Well, your brain is really struggling. I mean, one of the things we don't talk about much at all is about grief's impact on the brain. And there's that's a whole other podcast for another day.
We'll write
But
that
it is a huge well, it's a big passion of mine because a lot of us don't know this. We don't understand that the things that are happening to our neurons and our pathways are really complex and they're deeply affected. And one of the reasons that pet loss tends to hit differently, and some would say harder, is because our animal is so ingrained in every daily routine. We are used to seeing them multiple times per hour, especially if we work from home. We are used to having them be sitting there, or we're used to talking to them, we're used to feeding them, we're used to chatting with them about our day. And when all of that is instantly gone, our neurons freak out, for lack of a more scientific term. It's a very complex process. And the way that we support our brain, we can help support our brain through it, but it takes a lot of effort and you have to kind of be aware of what's going on in your brain. And that's something I didn't learn about that in school. No one in my family talked to me about that. And that is one of the reasons why so many people, particularly with this type of loss, feel so discombobulated and unmoored, is because really their brain is just so confused. Where's Macy? Where's Macy? Macy should be here. Why isn't Macy here? I'm thinking of Maisie. Oh, wait, no, Maisie's dead, but Maisie should be here. I mean, that is what your brain is doing even now for you.
Mm.
You're still in the early days. So that is a big factor as opposed to a human loss where, if it is a grandparent or even a parent that you may not have a daily interaction with at all, you may not speak to your grandparents every day. You might see them twice a year. That's a very different thing for your brain to ease into as opposed to someone who's been present every hour of every day for the last 20 years or 15 years.
And I think too, I think I'm going to put this into two parts. So there's just a couple more things that are coming up and then we will wrap up. But one thing that I did struggle with floss was and this was my naivety, I didn't realize with animals, especially with dogs, that most of the time you need to choose to put them, to give them euthanasia because their bodies really, and I've had extensive chats with vets about this, that a dog will usually pass on their own terms in quite a lot of pain, and it's not really nice for the dog. But before I even had to think about that with Floss, or before she got old, I just thought that like humans, like they get a bit old and then they pass away and it's really nice and they're old and they pass. But what I'm learning to be true more than ever is when you have an animal, at some stage you kind of have to make that decision, and that's something that is just like, who are we to make a decision on an animal that we can't even talk to in our own language? Like, it'd be different if we could speak the same language. I can go, okay, Maisie, how you feeling? Is it time? Oh, no, Mum. Can I stay for another week? Okay. What a beautiful world we could live in if we spoke the same language. And then I think part of that decision would be like, it's never easy, but human to human, we can kind of go, okay, they're in a coma, they can't talk or whatever. But animals, some of them, like both of mine, were awesome right to the very day, eating, still going to the toilet fine. Like most people, like they're not moving, they don't go to the toilet, they're not eating. Oh, it's time. Well, I was going by all of those things with my girls, and they were still happy days to a point, right?
Yeah.
That was really hard. And I think that discussion is just, you've got to take it with your own beliefs, your own values, how you are as a person and what you believe in and what feels good for you and what feels good for your animal. And don't be afraid if you don't see it. Like, I never saw it in any of mine. Looking back now, I can see some photos with Floss and go, oh, my little girl looks very old. Yes. But I was very close to my animals and I never saw it. So I just want to give people that, like, to talk about it and to go, I didn't know. And to also talk about the fact that as a animal owner, when you get an animal, I didn't know as they fell into my life that I would have had to make this decision. I just thought that they might just pass away in their sleep and it's all like Disney cartoons and it's all nice and off they go to the Rainbow Bridge.
I did a post yesterday that a lot of people are resonant reel. I put out a reel every single day with a pet loss topic and also a photo post every day. And yesterday I made one that talked about reasons why pet loss sometimes hurts, harder than human loss. And in making the euthanasia decisions, the wrenching euthanasia decisions was one of those points. And I think last time I looked, that is the comment that had that is the topic that had the most comments about it. People reflecting back, yes, that is the hardest thing for me, having to live with that decision. Did I do it too soon? Did I wait too long? Was it for me? Was it for them? And it's something that we never face in any facet of our life. And again, what preparation have we possibly had to prepare ourselves for this? And like you mentioned, there are quality of life scales. Those are very helpful to look at. And our veterinarians will weigh in. And some veterinarians will give you an opinion. Others absolutely will not. They will not even go there. They will not even make a recommendation. And, when I work with people on this, I'm not going to give a recommendation either, but I'm going to help them ask the right questions, think things through, think about their own risk assessment, like what your vet was saying about, the car accident is coming. But ultimately, there's also a lot of gray area. There's a lot of animals who have cognitive problems, animals who have dementia, and the quality of life scales don't apply. Those animals are still eating and drinking and pooping too. But there's other things going on that impact, quality of life. And many guardians just feel so unequipped to make a medical decision about that. And many feel nervous about making the spiritual decision about it. And it's something, again, who do you talk to? Who can you talk this out with? And people, people have a lot of opinions. So if you do talk to people, they might say, well, just end the suffering. Sure. Yeah. Like that's a nice idea, but am I sure they're suffering? And many people worry, well, my animal will be mad at me if I do the wrong thing. And that gets people into paralysis, making the decision. So it's such a complicated thing. And again, we have no guidelines or parameters or barometers for how to even handle it, because it's something we do not encounter with humans for the most part. Here in the States, we have some places where people can choose euthanasia, but again, those are people usually choosing it for themselves and not someone else making the call.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So that's where we wish the animals could put their hand up, and that's hard because no matter how close you are with your animal, they don't have a voice, and I think that's what makes it hard as a pet parent is your little animal. We speak on behalf of them all the time, and then when it comes to that point, there's no turning back. But also, I've never really met anyone, and it'd be interesting to see, you meet a lot of people going through this process. I never met anyone that's 100%. Like, I know I made the right decision with Chester, I had no choice. With Floss, I really had no choice. With Maisie, I had a choice. And looking back, they're all, if someone said to me, oh, which one is the easier one? None of them are easier. I mean, the beauty about, I had a whole week with Floss and a whole week with Maisie before they both passed, especially with Maisie, I had that day booked, and every day I woke up and I could tell her everything I felt, everything I wanted. I took heaps of videos, heaps of photos, and the other ones I didn't really do that. But with her, it was more like all of it was bittersweet. None of it was ever easy. And I think when you have to make that decision to say goodbye, I don't think really there's any pet owner on this earth that goes, yeah, I did the right thing. It felt really great and I did the right thing. Put their hands together and walk away. I know I did the right thing, but I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it so much that when I spoke to my close girlfriends in New Zealand, once I came home that night and I had a drink, bit of a stiff drink, and I rang all my girlfriends in New Zealand, each one of them said exactly the same thing to me. We love you. And I messaged them when I got into the car on the way home. I said, she's gone. That's all I said. So they knew. But each one of them, they don't know each other, said the exact same thing. We didn't think you were going to do it.
Wow. And
one or two things happened. One of them was like, oh, did I have a choice not to say goodbye? Yeah, and that was really hard too, because that comes from love, but it's also like, did I do the right thing? Could I have held on to her for a little bit? But I know when you've had a dog that's had seizures and had been sick, every time that happened, that's what I would always say to my vet. I can handle any sickness in the world. You bring me anything, I can handle it. I can't handle seizures. I can't. That was a really rough point for me. And because they would just, and I think the trauma from my cat just dying in front of me, some seizures carry on and the animal doesn't live. And that was always in my mind. And I had, and it just brought, every time Maisie had one, she didn't have many, she might have had 3 or 4, but it brought Chester up every time, and it brought Floss up having that stroke, and like it just brought it up every time for me, and the helplessness of having to time it, having to write all these things when your animal's doing it. It never feels the right time. And when someone says, I didn't think you'd do it, that's a hard thing to swallow, because absolutely 100% I didn't want to do it. And that's when I asked the vet, I looked at him and I trusted him fully. He was like one of my mates, it was just because we saw each other all the bloody time. and they knew, they're like, hi Barbara, hi Maisie, and all the girls, every time we'd go in, I think people thought we were a little bit famous. Like every time we'd walk into the vet clinic, all the young girls get all excited, and everyone was like looking at me and then looking at Maisie like, are we meant to know these people? Because everyone's making a fuss of them, but they're not making a fuss at. That's how often I would go. But it was so beautiful because I knew that we were in a safe place, and they knew that I wasn't an owner that was a hypochondriac. They knew I deeply cared for my animals' care. And every time I took either of my dog to the vet, I would always be supported with, you did the right thing. Here's this cream. I had never once been turned away by a vet to say, you're overreacting. Like, I know my animals and I've got a very good intuition. But I did have a conversation with a couple of people once Maisie passed, and this really, I had to walk away because I was not impressed. And it was a kind of conversation that I've heard this a couple of times that went like this. Yeah, I don't really think animals sometimes are as sick as what they are. I think vets just make, it's like the pharmaceutical industry for humans. I think the vets just make all these operations and diseases up for them to make money.
Wow.
Now, when you've had an animal that has been severely ill for a really long time and you hear that from someone who doesn't own any animals, and you hear that from a couple of people, that struck a bit of a sensitive nerve for me.
Definitely.
Sure, there's vets out there that do that are a bit dodge, or same with any medical profession. There's good people and there's not so good people. I honor that.
Exactly.
I recognize that 100%. But when I know my animal and I treat my animal's health like my health, like I will ask 100, like I would. The vet would actually say to me, I love seeing you. Not so much, but he's like, you ask me heaps of questions. I challenge him. So at one time she had a skin condition and I said, I think that's the start of calcutosis or something, and it's a form of skin eating disease that some Cushing's dogs get. And because I had done all my research and learned, he went, sorry, what? And he's the head vet, and he's looking up and he's like, God, I love having consults with you, Barbara. I'm learning. I'm like, well, you need to pay me. But that was the beauty of the relationship I had, is he knew every time I came, he would prescribe whatever, and I'd do my research. I said, don't you think that's 5 mils? And he'd go, wow. Like, I'd challenge him. Probably as a pain in the ass, but I did it in a nice way. I wasn't being a cow. He'd give her probiotics, and I'd look at him and I'd go, oh, is that 5 mils 3 times? And he'd go like, do you want a job? Like, I actually got offered a job so many times as a vet, and I said, oh, there's no way I could do what you guys do. But that's the kind of relationship I want people to have with their vet nurse, their vet. These people, I mean, can we just take a little moment to
please
appreciate and honor these vets? What they have to do is they hardly get toilet breaks. They hardly eat. I don't know about the States, but in Australia, it's one of the highest suicide rates.
Same
vets.
here.
And a couple of the stories I've heard is I've heard a vet on one particular day, a family brought in a dog, and so Maisie had her TPLO surgery, which is like a knee reconstruction surgery. So dogs, she was a Bichon Shih Tzu, and any of those type of dogs tend to have patella injuries or knee operations, very common. And this particular dog was quite young, had to have the operation. It's about, with rehab and everything, Australian dollars, about $5,000 you're looking at. And this particular family couldn't do it. And there's always alternatives. With vets, surgery is always the golden care, or it's always the level, but then they've also got all these other options, rehab or a bit of anti-inflammatory. Like, here I am, like I've been well versed in this, so I know there's different levels. And this one vet particular, this dog came in and they just said, oh, look, we just need to put it down. Like, sorry, I don't like saying those words. We need to euthanize it and say goodbye to it. And the vet said, no, look, you're not hearing me. We've got all these options. And the vets in Australia can only not euthanize it if the vets will surrender it. So the conversation is then, if the owners will say, no, we need to say goodbye to the pet and it needs to go to dog heaven, the vets can ask the question, would you like to surrender it? Which means that, and these owners wouldn't. And they had a bit of back and forth, to the point where then the owner rang back and said, no, just do it today. And they had to do it today. And they did it. Yeah. And so then, and then after that consult, he had to go see a puppy and then deliver a cancer message to a patient. And then, like, this is in there every day, then say goodbye to a dog. That, like, this is what these vets do. And then these vets see those same owners come back a few months' time with another puppy. And I said, are you effing kidding me? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they have massive leg surgery like Maisie did, and she had to be in a crate for 6 weeks, and you had to ice the wound, and then you had to, like, I follow all the rules. It'll cost me $5.5 grand. I'm going to follow the rules for my piggy bank, but I'm going to follow the rules then on a Maisie, because it's a pretty big surgery, and she was only a little dog. So crate, then icing, had to ice every few hours, and then make sure all that stuff after surgery. And then I brought her in and carried her in, and he just looked at the stitches and said, oh, Barbs. I said, what? And he goes, oh, he goes, I cannot begin. This is beautiful. Why can't everyone be like you? And he said, I do a leg surgery, and then I get a phone call the next day. Oh, is it okay? My dog's running around with my other dog. Like, just had a massive knee surgery. Or they see the dogs jump out of the utes to coming into the thing. And he's just like, and he goes, some days, and I'm thinking, so this is why I wanted to do a shout out, honor, not a shout out, a really honorable mention to every veterinarian around the world that does what they do, because they save us, they save our animals. And if you get the right one, they change your life.
Absolutely. And vet nurses, vet techs, all animal care workers in veterinary clinics, incredible people. And there are, sure, just like you mentioned, there are veterinarians who make mistakes. There are veterinarians who perhaps are not as upfront as they could be about things. And we've all heard horror stories. But I got to tell you, I work with people all day, every day, and they're veterinarians. And one of the things I encourage people to do is to have very open dialogues with their veterinarians after their animals die. Because sometimes in the heat of the moment, you don't get to ask all your questions, or, you kind of, like you've expressed, you go into shutdown mode, or you go into panic mode. And so many of my clients are left kind of unsure about what even happened, right? So something I encourage people to do is to reach out, even if it's been 3 months, 6 months, a year, and just say, I have a few remaining questions. Could you help clarify a few of these things? And because that's something that I encourage my clients to do, I have been able to read these truly magnificent responses from many, many, many veterinarians who take the time to respond with care and tenderness and compassion, and explaining complicated medical things in a way that is accessible, and also keeping in mind the feelings that my clients are going through. And I've always respected everybody in the veterinary profession, but I've never had more respect than I do now after witnessing the way that so many veterinarians, even after this guardian is no longer coming to their clinic and their animal's been dead for 6 months, the way they respond and genuinely want to help, not only convey this medical information, but help a guardian grieve. So I'm right there with you in celebrating and honoring the work that veterinarians and everyone in the veterinary profession, the work that they do. It's absolutely essential and incredible.
Yeah,
we're lucky to have them.
Yes, and they see, what am I trying to say? They see animals coming into this world, and they see animals going out, and all the stuff in between. And now more than ever, animals are an extension of the family, and that they are sometimes people's children, or they're a work dog. A lot of tradies here have them as take them to work on their truck every day. It's not just therapy dogs, and all are so connected to us now. And what a beautiful gift that and all animals, and cats and dogs and anything. Sorry, I don't want to just... Rabbits
and rats and guinea pigs and parrots. And I've had a lot of different types of animals in my practice. I love them all.
And axolotls, and I'm just trying to think of all sorts of different animals that you may have seen. So, and today was just the first conversation, because I think I've already written some notes for our next episode, if you're okay to come back on.
I'm ready. Anytime, Barbara, I'll be here.
Because I've got our next topics is about the grief and the brain and how that works, and also anticipatory grief.
Anticipatory grief. Absolutely.
Hard to go through and hard to say.
Amen.
And I think that would be like the list I've got to pick your brain and to hear and have this. Again, the beauty about podcasts is people can come back and listen to them and cut out to the bits that interest them and repeat it. And pet grief, whether we have animals, like I said in the beginning, whether they're young, like animals pass at any age. We're very
Yes, they do.
lucky.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, but sometimes that can be 3 months. That can be a day old. It can be like it happens when it happens. And having this little library here that you and I can create together is a beautiful way that people can, okay, this one's about the brain and the grief. Okay, my animal may be passing again. What can I learn to help me through that? And I think I never knew this stuff existed until I met you. And it's such a beautiful, I know how lonely it can feel and just how hard and how shit it is. Like no words can describe the pain. You just want to hide away. You don't want to do life anymore. It's just not fair. And I want to honor those words and I want to honor those feelings of anyone feeling like this right now. We're with you and we're right there with you. And we want to be able to give you that support to, not just, there, we're here for you. Genuinely, we see you, we're here, and we're living it day to day, just like you are.
Absolutely. And you sharing your stories and your 3 very different stories is such a step to support people as well. Many, many grieving guardians turn to other people's stories. They want to hear other people's end of life experiences. They're looking to make a connection to their experience and your experience. And I really appreciate you helping other people connect to their own grief story by sharing yours, especially because yours are each so different. And, I work with lots of people who have a sudden traumatic loss, like a heart attack in front of them. And there are many people I work with who've never heard that story that anyone else has had before because it's an unusual thing. So, even just what you're doing here today by sharing your story, normalizing these death stories is so powerful. So thank you for being so open to normalize and share and connect in that way.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't planning to actually go into detail with that today. So as I was talking about it, like I said, I wanted to rush through it and I was like, this is gonna be boring for people. I'm being self-indulgent. It's not what my podcast is about. I've got you over there. It's nighttime there. And I don't want to hold you. It's interesting where your brain goes, right? I don't want to hold you up. It's an uncomfortable thing to talk about. People don't want to hear it. Isn't it interesting? I'm just being totally honest. As I was saying that's exactly what my brain was presenting.
Mm-hmm. Well, your brain was doing some of the work that society does with this type of disenfranchised grief. This is called disenfranchised grief because it's something that societally isn't acceptable. You don't get bereavement days off work for this in most cases. No one brings a casserole. No one comes to a funeral. We don't even have funerals, right? So this is a type of grief that is hidden. It's tucked away. It's not talked about. And your brain is probably has some societal messaging. No one wants to hear about this. I'm making a problem, so you've got some deprogramming to do on that. We can work on that later.
We'll work on that. Yeah. I just want to, now before we go, if anyone would like to connect with you and follow your page and reach out to you, where can they find you?
Sure. Well, anyone is always welcome to come to my website, which is honoringouranimals.com. There's information there about all the different types of work I do, and you can reach out to me if you want to get in touch to do a consultation. But most people like to head over to my Instagram, which is at honoringouranimals. And at my Instagram, I do post usually twice daily content related to pet loss and anticipatory grief and tips and tricks and empowerment and support. I've built a really beautiful community there with many people in the comments who are eager to show up and support even when I can't be there because I'm in sessions with clients all day, every day. And one thing I do like to mention that I started coming up on a year ago soon, I started doing live pet memorial service, a live pet memorial service every single month. And I come onto live and I write a different kind of ceremony every month, and people can submit their names and their animals' names to be honored in the ceremony. And so many people find this so supportive to be in a live room with so many other grieving guardians. And I try to make the memorial service filled with hope and filled with, support, and try to say supportive things. And then we read all of the guardians' names alongside their animals' names, and each animal gets a moment of honor, or multiple animals sometimes for the same guardian. And I also do a segment in there where we honor animals who might be sick or struggling or missing, for the people who are in anticipatory grief as well. So I just want to encourage anyone listening. And once you come to my page, keep your eyes peeled. Every month I put out a call for names. You can submit your animal for the service. And many people I know, it's the first time their animal has been sort of publicly acknowledged as a being whose life had real significance. And it's very, very healing for people. So that's just one thing I want to invite everyone to be a part of, if it feels supportive at this moment for you.
Thank you for helping all of us through this time in our life. And also public holidays. It's public holiday here today, but Easter, Christmas. I know that Easter had just been, and I watched one of your lives. It was so beautiful about helping people through. This might be your first Easter without your pet, taking family photos, and your pet's not there, or you're not. I Floss a couple of times has had to get her stomach pumped because she would find chocolate eggs and eat the eggs. So as a dog owner, if you've ever had an animal eat chocolate and you had to get their stomach pumped, that's fun times. But all those memories, Christmas, Easter, birthdays, anniversaries, your page really supported me through Easter. I know it supports a lot of your community because we can talk about it, we can share memories. You give some fantastic advice that I hadn't even thought of about the Easter egg hunt, and how every year with Arnie you put...
Here's Arnie's egg. I have it here. That's Arnie's egg. I still have it up from Easter. Yeah, I go live on every single holiday. I've been live on Christmas Day, on New Year's Day, Christmas Eve. I go live. I'll be live on Mother's Day, probably American Mother's Day, and maybe even Father's Day. I try to, at Labor Day, 4th of July, I do go live all the time on holidays because my community has asked me for that, and I'm willing to take time out of my holiday to show up for everyone. Many people are alone on holidays, and if they are alone without their animal, it is a very lonely day. And so I've had people come onto the live and they're like hiding in the bathroom at their aunt's house for Thanksgiving, and they just need to like see someone who gets it. So yeah, I do recognize the significance of holidays, of milestone days, birthdays, and I do try to show up for my community as much as possible. Those days are very hard, and you're sitting there at Christmas dinner and no one's thinking about your animal except for you, but you are. And so I want everyone to know that I'm thinking about your animals too on those big days. And I understand that the holiday is not the same. And also, I try to give tons and tons and tons of ideas of how to keep your animal included in the holidays. So I make a lot of content about that as well.
Yeah, you do. This is one of many chats that we're going to have. And I just thank you for your time and your knowledge and your support personally, but also as a community base. Is that it's very rare to have a community that is what it is. It's a community. Like I commented once on one photo about Maisie, and I just got messages after messages and inboxes, and like so many messages. I'd love to see what your inbox is like, because that was just one time I commented. So your inbox must be like full.
It's busy. It's busy, but I do respond. I respond to almost every comment on every post. I respond to my DMs. You just never know when someone who really just needs a kind word of support, how you can make a difference in their entire grief experience. And so while I can, if I get much bigger, I won't be able to, but for now, I do really try to personally reach out to every single person who reaches out to me, because sometimes I know I'm the only person that they are reaching out to that they feel safe to share with. And so I really, really treasure that, and I honor it. And like I say, I get to show up as Arnie in those moments to hold space for people.
And we want to dedicate this episode to Arnie and Maisie for bringing us together and giving them that, really honoring them. And I can't say before we go, I just want to dedicate, also mention beautiful artwork behind you, because I know many people will get glimpses of this video and be like, what's behind Beth? And it's all your beautiful artwork and stuff that you've done yourself.
A lot of it, yeah. Like the two big paintings are mine, and I've got this lion head from Ocean Soul, which is a company in Kenya that makes art out of recycled flip flops. And my friends Ken and Ron made that amazing blue squirrel at Mercantile Home in Easton, Pennsylvania. And so, yeah, and there's Carol Channing, the famous musical theater celebrity, and I up there in that photo. So. Lots of joyful things from my life that I enjoy having around me when I'm doing this work. And my couch is orange because Arnie was an orange cat. And so kind of everything I do is also orange.
Orange is a great, powerful, strong color.
A signature color. And that's a pro tip for anyone. If your animal does not already have a signature color, create one for them. And that is always a way to honor them wherever you are, is through their signature color. And so that's a little piece of advice. Even if you didn't have one for your animal in life, create one for them now. And that way, for me, all orange objects are sacred. And when I have a choice to choose a color for anything, it's always orange. And that keeps me extremely connected to Arnie in a way that I absolutely love.
Oh, my cheeks are sore from smiling so much. We're talking about pet grief and how do I have a sore face from smiling. So thank you so much for our chat, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
We'll talk again soon. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and thank you, Barbara, for shining a light on this very important topic.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and it has inspired you on your self-care journey. Please feel free to share this with a friend and subscribe over on Apple Podcast. I really love hearing your feedback. So guys, please feel free to write a review on Apple and let me know which part of this episode resonated with you the most. To fall in love with yourself is the first secret to happiness. To find out a bit more about Self-Care Studio or the Studio Chat podcast, head over to my Instagram page, self_care_studio, or on my website, selfcarebybarbaraThompson.com.au. Really look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Look after you. And I'll catch you soon. Bye.